That's why I think we're in a very interesting situation. Now,
Okay, so your perception is accurate, and also and so we're faced with a dichotomy. Okay, this dichotomy has come in ever since the 1700s and the creation of what we call the Age of Enlightenment, where Descartes and his Cartesian framework rose. Okay, left, right, up, down, that kind of thing is all there is. Matter is solid, and if you removed all consciousness from the universe, all matter would still exist. All of those things are false, right? Up, down, all of these things, none of those exist. It's all our minds interpreting information. Our minds never move. Our bodies never move. That's an illusion. Our minds are forever part of the grander, greater, supreme everything, the absolute. We just have a finite version of that, which is why we can't conceive of things well. And we get to this point where we are faced with this dichotomy. And I personally find living in an aware, awake, informative universe is ever so much more fun than living in the Cartesian dead material space, right? The materium. And so the universe talks to myself and Heidi constantly, and as it does to you. And you just need to open up your eyes in order to receive valuable, affirming, and sometimes directional guidance from the universe, right? And it makes life ever so much more interesting, ever so much more productive, and you get to meet all kinds of interesting people, and the universe will provide you just what you need when you need it. And the timing of the synchronicity is just elegant. It's exquisite. I love those moments.
So do I. And now it is beautiful when you live like. In fact, I had a meeting with somebody yesterday who said, "I'm on this spiritual journey. What do I do next?" I said, "What are you asking me for?" Do I look like I know what I'm doing? No, I haven't got a clue.
Right.
I said, you just got to start listening. Right. Like, listening to what? I was like, well, just listen, and you'll find it.
Right.
I don't think I was very helpful.
I try to give these people that come to me this way a perspective, a paradigm in which to exist. So I tell them to, read the Hermetic principles, the Kabbalion, this kind of thing, and then you get the idea, right? Yep, there you go. And no matter where you go, it's the same principles. So Hermes was recast as Thoth for the Egyptians. He predates both of those. He predates the Vedas. All of this stuff exists in the Vedas. It comes all the way through. We even see it in like the Law of One stuff, all of that business, right? Yeah, and it's all simply restatement of the Hermetic principles. And this tells you that you're living in an aware, participatory, directional, and reaffirming universe. And you can accept it, or you can close your mind and live in that hellhole that the people that spray the chemtrails are trying to create, right? That sort of thing. And it's a matter of choice.
It is a matter of choice. And
excuse me, that's the spiritual part. So here's a beautiful definition of spirituality that comes from Hermes or from religion. That's the definition of religion, is to realize your spirit and to discover it, right? To realize it, to recognize it always, live attached to that spirit, and then to express it. And that's all religion is. Everything beyond that is theocracy. Theocracy, they're trying to merge a personality to your religious impulse, right? To create a God for you to worship. If you separate theology away from it, you simply have the purity of that, of religion and spirit, right? Which need not have anybody in between, as you so widely said, right? Why do you ask me? Go find it yourself. It's your spirit, right?
Absolutely. We don't need middlemen.
Correct.
And I keep telling everybody to think for themselves. It's quite hard teaching people to think for themselves. It's almost as hard as telling them, as giving stuff away. They don't trust it.
Right. And rightly so, though, because of their experience with what they call education, right? Schooling has so warped their minds. I'm very proud that I have no degrees. I have lots of advanced schooling where I would drop in for a course here or there just to see what they were talking about. But I've never, ever committed to any of that sort of thing, and have no college career or history that way. So my mind is unpolluted by their attempts. But I do see that it's difficult to get people to think. And then these days, you kids, I mean, I throw you in there too because you've been affected by it. You can't read. Obviously you do, but most of these kids can't read a whole chapter, right? They can't hold it in their mind. By the time they get to the end of the chapter, they have no idea what they've read, what the conclusion was, etc. They don't know how to read to inform themselves. All they know how to do is read for instructions to get through changing a tire, baking a cake or whatever, right? That sort of thing. Minimalist level of mechanistic instruction. It's quite sad.
Well, I saw your post the other night talking about your parents reading to you at night for half an hour, and you couldn't wait for the next one because you wanted to know what happened. And, and I was like, yeah, Clif's right. God damn it. How did that slip? Because I read to all my kids until they were maybe 4, maybe 5. Although, and the power is so intense of that, because when my daughters were about 7, they would always ask me for stories at night, and then I'd have to tell them. I told them stories, and then I realized 10 years later how powerful that was when my youngest daughter decided she wanted to learn to fly a plane, because I was telling her stories about my days as a pilot 40 years ago. And I was like, wow, that really stuck. I couldn't believe, I was taken by surprise by it, because I'd forgotten that I told her the stories, in fact. But these things are so powerful. So yeah, I totally. So, and you guys watching, follow Clif on X. He's every day there dishing out good advice and acerbic wit and humor, and shooting a few people down every now and then.
I have a tendency to be a little raspy. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's what we love about you. But for those people watching this show that don't know you, you first came to people's attention because you captured data that was predicting things, correct? Do you want to explain that?
Okay, so my career spans from the introduction of DOS. Okay, I've been dealing with computers since 1979. In the course of that, I wanted to expand the ability. I was a programmer and a systems designer, and I wanted to expand the ability of these machines. And I was actually hoping to be able to connect the machines more directly to what we might call the materium or the ether or the spirit, where we could get out real information, right? And so I came up with arguably one of the first large language models, and I started the coding in 1993, and the idea crystallized as I was going to a consulting gig in Mexico City, and the airplane was struck twice by lightning. And I felt the first one before it hit, and lots of other people did as well. And then like 4 minutes later, we had another strike of the lightning, and everybody in the plane was sensing it before it actually occurred. And I heard in their discussions, it's late at night, there weren't that many people on the plane, so I could really hear it quite well. Everybody was awake because of the lightning strike, and I heard them discussing, and then all of a sudden their language changed, and then like 20 seconds later, we got hit by another round of lightning. And I knew that their brains were connecting because I felt it. I actually felt it in my body, right? Before it struck, I felt the electricity, the whole thing. And so that was the connection. Aha, this is what happens, and it happens ahead of these events. It comes into their minds. I've been thinking about this for years. I've been cogitating this since like mid-'80s. I worked on this thing called Signal Switching System 7. Okay, that's what arguably allows the internet to exist. And the concept is that we invented this code at a other service provider, which is a form of a telco, a corporation that does telephony. And what the concept is this. They used to have phones where they would have vast numbers of lines going up and down the street in order to carry a single line to a house that would diverge off, because they couldn't separate phone calls one from another going over the same line. They didn't understand frequency control. So in Signal Switching System 7, what we did was we came up with a way for there to be a single band with everything being carried on it, but everything being carried discreetly within that band, and a monitoring operational OS, the operating system, that would be aware of what was being said, so it could switch the calls based on the actual content. This was 1983, it was such a huge thing, you don't know, and it allowed the internet to actually exist, because the internet runs on the backbone of all of the old landlines. So we may think we're in a wireless world with all of these cell towers, but all those cell towers are connected to each other by landlines. And it runs through SSS7 in order to switch from various different modes, right, to have the system monitor it. And so that gave me the idea that there are layers and layers and layers and layers of activity within our language. And then once you become aware of this, you start seeing it in people's interaction. You can see their emotions rise, it starts changing their language, and you say, oh, there's going to be a fight, that kind of thing, right? I was aware of this at an intuitive level because I'd studied martial arts for so long, but it never had been conceptualized, never really put metacognition to it to analyze it in real time. So in 93, I came up with this idea flying down to Mexico City when the plane was struck by lightning. And then there was an 8.0 earthquake, 8.4 earthquake the next day while I was there. So I wonder if that's participatory too. Anyway, though, big energies, big idea. And I come back and I start working on this idea. Takes me from 93 until 97 was when I did a first partial run, when I had my large language model maybe 20% defined. I had to go through dictionaries and I had to define all these words. Tedious beyond understanding, because we didn't have AI to automate it. And at times I would stop and I'd discover a class of word, figure out a way that my software could identify that word, and I would automate the process of that particular kind of word, articles, adjectives, these kind of things, right? And so it was tedious beyond understanding. I had about 20% done, and I ran the first run in 97 with the intent. My whole point of this was to become wealthy quickly by using it to predict stock kind of things, right?
Yeah, of course.
And I had a practical use for it. Actually, okay, so I got to own up to it and be honest. I was intrigued, right? I didn't really give a shit if it was ever productive. I was intrigued by the idea. I wanted to see if I could do it. And I was able to do it. I ran that first partial run, and I started getting back weird ass results, things that I had no way of understanding, because the way I'd written the code relative to the large language model, the code was free to invent concepts. When it ran across a predictive, what would qualify as predictive word or phrase, even if it wasn't defined, it was able to take it out of the context with the context and hold it over there for an association for me. And so all these strange things were coming out. New money. And so the new money that arose in 1997 actually goes on to become Bitcoin and all the cryptos in 2010. So it took that long for it to emerge from that first prescient hint. Right now, we can say that, in fact, people were working on the concept of the double spend for cryptos back in the 80s. So there was discussion in Reddit and all of these other boards that could have been picked up. And if it was so picked up by my process, it was then interpreted as the new money, which led me to the idea of cryptos. And so I got in early, as did a lot of other people that were, moved by universe to follow me then, right? And so we progress, but that's basically the idea, that humans leak out information in the form of language change. You're sitting there talking about your dog, and all of a sudden you have a strange concept, and you're talking about an eagle or a sausage or something. And what is it that caused that? May have been something from your environment intruding in on your mind that is leaking out. And I made I made a splash with that technology over the decades. Got myself into lots of trouble, and actually achieved my goal, not easily and not early, but I did manage to acquire my fortune and be able to direct my life the way I wanted. So it worked out from the 90s. Not at all easy though.
Well,
so it wasn't like coming up with a hit rock song or something, right?
Dude, listen, making puff pastry with Emma flour is not easy, but I'm going to persevere.
You can do it. You can do it.
Definitely going to do it. I mean, you found a way of technologically connecting to consciousness, didn't you, really?
In a sense, one or two steps removed, because by the time the consciousness changes and your language changes, there's some things that happen in that process. Many people won't write down the word changes. They'll think of themselves, oh, that's odd, and not put it down because it doesn't feel right. Some people do put those down, and that's what I pick up. So I'm picking up maybe 1% of all of the actual perceptive prescient language, simply because that's all that's actually written down and my machine can get at. Okay, so my LLM is not in any way reaching out into the ether and picking up information directly. It's not contacting consciousness at that level. So this is clearly one or two steps removed.
Yeah, for me though, you're the consciousness that connected to the bigger consciousness that got you to do that thing that was a stepping stone towards the next.
Right. That's the way it works, right? As above, so below, right? So,
yeah,
they wanted it. Consciousness wanted that to occur. Had it not been me, there would have been someone else. In fact, Martin Armstrong was doing very much the same thing with his Socrates LLM that I was doing, only he was taking a different approach, right? He was using the analytic metrics available to the computers to make conclusions, where I was after the woo part of it all.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, I had a different route. I became a search engine optimization expert. I was a bit later on with the internet than you. And when I started looking into keywords, I was like, what? So I had a business in the UK, which was skip hire, which you might not know what that is. It's like dumpster rental, big metal.
Sure.
Yeah. Sure. So it's waste management. And it was skip hire was the keyword. And I was like, when I started doing it really early on, built it into quite a big business. There were 80,000 variations on that one word. And when I realized there were 80,000 variations on it, I went, hang on a minute. We have to create content for every single one of those keywords. And nobody else is doing it. And that's what I did. And we just went straight to the top of all the search engines for all the keywords. Right. And we couldn't handle it. We started with 2 people. We ended up having 300 people in the call center trying to handle all these phone calls because we were just at the top of all the search engines when people were just starting to use the internet for finding businesses.
Right.
So that was a big insight for me. And it enabled me to read the mind of any market, and I ended up teaching people that you can read the mind of any market before you produce a product, because most people go about business
ask backwards, right?
Ask backwards, yeah, ask about front, as we say. You know, they just go, I'm going to build an Italian restaurant in this street. Why? Because I love Italian food. The people nearby like Italian food. That's
no. Can you cook this stuff? Can you find an Italian cook? Yeah.
And that's why restaurants always crash, because it's the ego. Right. Anyway, it's hilarious, isn't it? Really?
Right. It is.
And we had to evolve.
Right.
Didn't we?
Oh, we did. Okay, so there is this aspect of that too. that there is obviously something that moves humanity, right? And that we can think of it as the Brahma wakes up and has an infinite number of dreams. We're one of those dreams kind of thing, and it's all illusionary at that level. But even within the illusion of us having a dream, and this is not a real solid reality, it's all in our minds at the mentition level, there is still something external to humanity and external to us as individuals that makes us do things. It doesn't force us to, it provides incentives and impels us to do so that we feel good. We have that emotional pressure that is relieved when we get in sync with where we should be in life, right? And obviously, when you're not in sync, you end up, going the other way, as we've seen recently with David Wilcock, right? He was so out of sync that he took his own life.
Yeah, I want to talk about that.
Yeah, and it's all, it all has to do with our harmony within universe. I've taken Aikido, a particular kind of Aikido, Shinshin Soitsu Aikido, which is the art of peace. And it's all about being able to harmonize, which is one of the Hermetic principles, which is the reconciliation of opposites, right? The polarity aspect of things. And so in my opinion, if we were all to be hermetically oriented, we would all personally have very much better lives, and our social order would naturally fall into place. And it would also reveal those people that are deliberately doing all the things that they can to destroy the social order, harmony, etc., for whatever reasons, for whoever's gain. Okay, because I'm quite convinced none of these people, the prime ministers and stuff, none of those fuckers know what they're doing or why they are doing it. They're simply tools of something on the other side of them. And this is revealed if you have a particular view of life with this. And so it is harmony. It is the Hermetic principles that get us there.
Well, when you mentioned Aikido, there was a book I read many years ago about how the learning curve of Aikido is like this step process where, and you have to, you feel like you're going backwards, and then suddenly you make an advance. And it feels like that in this time now, that you've got billions of people having to learn about themselves, learn about what sovereignty is, learn about the fuel process in Ireland last week showed 1 million people that there's a problem having a country that is not fuel independent. There's a problem.
Right.
There's not
there's
food
a few problems.
Yeah. And it's like, it's a learning curve. And then you get up against it. It feels like you're getting nowhere. There's a jump forward. And that's very much what I understand about martial arts training, is because it was the same for me as a kid with judo. It was like hard. Suddenly I got a belt. And I was like, okay,
right,
move forward.
You start getting muscle memory.
Yeah, and it's a wonderful process, and all kids should do it because it teaches them a huge amount about life. But there are going to be people watching this right now who are going to pick up on the David Wilcock thing, and we will get to that. But what I want, they would have a go at me if I didn't ask you where you think we're at, because everybody's obsessed with where we're going and where we're at. And that's why Tarot by Janine is so good. That's why all the channelers are so. It's all psychics now, and because news is useless, right? So
analysis fails in a time of hyper novelty. We have hyper novelty now. We're in it for a couple of years. We've been in it for a couple of years. And within that hyper novelty, we have the intrusion as an aspect of it, of course, because it must exist, of the deliberate disinformation guys, right, that are polluting everything. So analysis can't work. Thus, indeed, Janine is in high demand. Thus, indeed, we have to have some other method of guiding us forward. And we've fallen back to the traditional old ways that come from our species, which is to go back to what we would call psychic, or closer to spirit. So we have bodies that are atoms. We have a mind that is mentition, and there's something other than that is non-corporeal. Our mind is non-corporeal, our bodies are corporeal, but our spirit is also non-corporeal and factually exists. And you can demonstrate that in so many ways. There's no point in doing that, right? But so few people understand the nature of their spirit and spirituality and all of that. It is a spiritual war. It's not a religious war. It is all things are binary in this universe. Okay, so all things have gender. And so what we're experiencing is this conflict of gender hijacked. And we see that with all of the transition things. So all men have aspects of feminine in them. All females have aspects of masculine in them. If you allow the social order to come in and twist your mind, then of course you could convince many men to allow the masculine to fade, which would allow the feminine to rise, and then you could exploit that and turn them into trans, which is what has happened, right? It's not a naturally arising thing. But that is an aspect of this greater capture of the process of defining humanity that we're undergoing. And this is the paradigm issue, right? And so in the 1700s, Descartes and all of his buddies get the Age of Enlightenment, and they start trying to convince us that scientism and matter is everything, and consciousness and spirit mean nothing. Even though all that time you find always the fringe elements of psychicism in all these different ways constantly bubbling up, because people are so dissatisfied with the Cartesian dialectic, the Cartesian paradigm. That Cartesian paradigm has been in existence for 325 years. and it's failing now, and it's failing under the assault of the quantum, the understanding of quantum, the understanding of the ether and spirit, and so on. As we get more understanding, the rigid view of the Cartesians are falling away. So where we are at now is we're in these 2 years, 26 and 27, and these will be looked at in the future as being those years that defined the paradigm collapse. And we're seeing it now. So I expect 10 years from now, there won't be academia as we understand it. People won't go to colleges. The institutions will be reused for something else, the buildings, right? And we'll have an entirely different approach to things that won't have this structured Cartesian overlay on education. And it'll be marvelous. Humans will be greatly freed. Our minds will be greatly freed. In doing so, we will lose the restrictions that are on people that cause them to do things like deny their own metacognition, deny their own state changes within their own thinking that actually add to their lives, right? And you get this all the time. Oh, you're not supposed to think that way. Oh, it's cartoonish or whatever, right? You're too sensitive. You shouldn't pay attention to those. And all this language to try and force humans into a mold that is not us. And we'll be busting out everywhere. It's going to be the most. So I'm with Trump. We're about to enter the golden age here, right? And so many people don't understand Trump. They think he's reneged on all of his promises. They don't understand where he's at in this grand global conspiracy and the grand global battle that is waging to determine the outcome of that conspiracy. Will humanity triumph or will it not? I think we will. Okay, so we're seeing it in Britain today, even, or in England. Fuck yep. Britain.
Millions of people on the streets in London today.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's all spirit. Those are all individual spirits that are moved by something other than fear and all of the crap that this system is trying to put down on them. Yeah. And so that's where we're at. We're at the turn of this paradigm. It'll take us 2 years. It's going to be radical. We'll get out all of the UFO stuff. We'll get out all of the hidden technology over the 2 years. It'll take us 20 years to implement it or more and get it out there to everybody. There are hints that I can see in some of the general information that's available that there are operations or plans that are going on in the background to that effect. In other words, there are people that know that the 0 point energy is going to be coming out, and they're planning now on a very effective strategy to implement this and get these devices out and so on, even though it'll be 5 years before those devices are even made. But they've got to do this level of planning ahead of time in order to, in my opinion, overcome some of the inequalities that might arise. So it's not going to do much good to flood the United States with 0 point energy devices if we leave Africa out, right? Yeah. So you've got to do it on an equitable arrangement, boost all the people, because one 0 point energy device in Africa leads to so much more of a bloom there than that same device used in an industrialized country, right? Okay, so there's huge benefits, and we can take advantage of these combinoric and synchronistic benefits if we do things. And I actually know that there are people that are being paid to do that kind of planning right now. And you're not ever going to hear these people. Maybe you'll hear about them in 5 years' time when their work emerges. But we're doing that now. So there's people that are planning on a victory.
But in the meantime, humans keep having this annoying habit of rising up. And there's a farmer, literally, it was in my house the other day, 30 miles away, demonstrated at his farm a HHO water-powered engine, has lots of other things going on. Unstoppable, because everybody wants to know now, and it's open source, and it's like, well, if they kill us, we don't care. There's 1,000 more behind us. That is the new spirit that's risen. And
I've seen a guy. Okay, so I saw a guy demonstrating a device that he purchased, and I'm going to get one of them. And it's a self-powering cook stove, and it runs on a little tiny lithium battery and water, and it uses the battery to form electrolysis to create the hydrogen, passes off the oxygen as a cleaning device on the surfaces, and then you burn the hydrogen for cook fuel.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a Brown's gas device here.
Yeah, same difference.
Same thing. It's the same thing. It's 50 years old. There in my living room.
Right. I know.
I've got a Polish friend. He's made a battery pack that is like 1,000 times more efficient than anything Tesla's brought out. And but he puts a little drip of electricity and then powers everything for months.
Yeah. I know.
And then word spreads. It's just like. Which is interesting. Yeah,
the internet does it, though. I was going to say that's what it is. It's the communications between us, right? The internet causes all the problems. You get all of the trolls, all of the disinformation and all of the crap and everything. But at its core, I'm still proud of having worked on the backbone of the internet, because it is such a marvelous thing for all of human minds, and it will be a tool for freeing us, and we'll overcome it, right? So I'm not worried about AI. AI is dumb. It's stupid. It's a useful tool, and it's never going to be taking over humans or anything. It's it's other humans agreeing to do what AI says that are the problem.
Well, I like your apocalyptimism. That's good. So I feel very optimistic about the outcome. But there is a lot of fear, and there's a lot of concern. And for me, in a spiritual sense, it's kind of like all of this is kind of teaching everybody to live in the present moment and do some bloody research for themselves about their own life, and have this conversation where we're talking about what may seemingly be a pointless subject of how to make healthy bread. Right. Is actually the most important subject there is.
It's how to change humanity. Correct.
Yeah, it is. It's fundamental, because they slipped in all this other shit.
Well, you weren't looking, right?
We were busy making money. That's
right. Or they had to distract it with Disney cartoons.
Don't get me started on Disney. So the question I was going to ask you about you made your money with that, and it was hard work. But did you? I don't think I've ever seen you talk about. Maybe you have. I just haven't seen it, about the lead up to COVID. I mean, you're more than just a programmer. You're also psychic yourself, right? So did you know COVID was coming? Let's
yes. Okay. Yeah. So, all right. So COVID was defined in my data in the year 2000 as the sun disease. Okay. The corona, right? That's where it came. There were two things that were connected to that: actual sun disease turning from yellow to white, but also this subset that ended up becoming COVID. And I thought it would be called, in the data, it was just called the sun disease. So I knew that it was coming. Now, bear in mind, in the lead up to COVID, I had passed, I died. Okay, so I'd gone through 30 plus years, 40 plus years of undiagnosed colon cancer and died in 2018. And so I was forced back in 2018 and was starting to recover. And then I came across, my data set had come across in March of 2019, the stuff that led me to think the pandemic was coming. And it was all about the military games in China, the people who were attending, where they were coming from, the biolab connections and all of that. Also in 2019, which I haven't been able to relocate, I came across a segment of a video in which Fauci's chief of staff was talking to a group of people in a conference, a small conference. Maybe there were 30 or 40 people there, some government building, right, in a conference room. And he was up on a little stage dancing, literally dancing, jumping up and down, saying, we did it. We attached the spike to coronavirus. And that's when I knew we were fucked, right? That they were going to try this. And I actually thought that it would be just that, okay? That it would be deadly, that it would be a real killer, that they were able to actually make bioweapons. In spite of the fact that I knew from my dad's work in the military and from all of these years that bioweapons simply don't exist. Okay, you can make smallpox very deadly, but you cannot make people susceptible to your deadly smallpox. So in other words, they can make the individual smallpox very deadly to someone who has susceptibility to it, but they can't make you susceptible to smallpox nor anything else. So I'm not susceptible now to coronavirus because of my high vitamin D levels. Had I known in my youth that a certain level of high vitamin D, 55 nanoliters per mole, is proof against colon cancer, I would have raised my vitamin D level up and would have eliminated the colon cancer, right? Mm-hmm. So there are things you can do to make yourself impervious to these problems. The colon cancer was deliberately given to me by the people who created the salt polio vaccine when they put in SV40, which is simian virus 40, which is extracted from green monkey blood, which was done in 1947 by two guys in Switzerland who later immigrate to Israel and become very big biochemists in Israel. And they set up this stuff that pollutes all of the vaccines since the 1950s. And it led to the biggest bloom in cancer, breast cancer for women and colon cancer for men. Now, I've had breast cancer, had a full-on mastectomy, had skin cancer from this, and finally died of the colon cancer. So that hits me in 2018. I'm exhausted. I'm thrown back. I didn't want to come back. I had all kinds of issues being alive. And then I discover the COVID is being released. That's why I got my channel taken away on YouTube so early, because in January of 2020, December of 2019, I started telling people, don't take the vaccine. They're going to try and do this shit. Start taking chaga mushroom. Because it turns out chaga has zinc and vitamin D in quantity, and it's what's known as a zinc ionophore, which is Zelensky's protocol, right? Get zinc in there so that it can zap the coronavirus. And so chaga was the route I selected. I didn't understand until later we could separate it out into, supplemental zinc and supplemental vitamin D and so forth. Anyway, so that's where it led. I got my channel thrown off, and then, ran into all of the problems with, the FBI and all of this kind of crud. Yeah. It was hell, dude. It was not a nice period, but it pissed me off, and that was good.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can take that energy and do productive things. That's what I like about it. That's what I like about righteous indignation.
Exactly.
We become alchemists and take that energy and go, which is martial arts, right?
Right.
Use the enemy's
energy against them. Yeah. Yep.
Which is
everybody always throws themselves.
I know, it's crazy, and I'm seeing it all the time. I saw an old man in a car with a mask on 2 days ago. I was like, oh my god.
There's no hope for them. Don't even worry about them. They're just going to die, and they'll be gone, right?
Yeah, I know, but I'm a bit of an old softy, Cliff. I still,
I know, I'm that same way. You hate seeing them be that stupid.
I really do. I've been trying so hard to wake them up, but
It's
anyway,
not up to you though, right? You have to understand that.
I know.
Everybody on their own time.
It's white knight syndrome is what I've got. It's an affliction. I'm working on it.
Yeah, yeah. So it's that empathy stuff.
It is that crazy empathy. Loving humans and everything. Yeah, you brought up David Wilcock, and you've also mentioned the UFO files, and I think the UFO files in particular are super important for historical reasons, if nothing else. Let's talk about those first. Why do you think are they trying to get ahead of the curve because something's coming they can't stop, or
that appears to be, there is evidence to that. Okay, the speed at which it all ramped up, it's atypical, especially with government and so on. Backing up a little bit though, the UFO files are extremely important because it provides us with a clear point of demarcation between what was before the age of denial and what is now, which is governments admitting to it. Now, they're not admitting yet to all of the horror that they've done, killing people, et cetera, and all of the millions of people that have died without the stuff that they could have had, like free energy, better healthcare, and so on, right? So there have been literally tens of millions of people that have died because of this secrecy. They're not admitting to that, but they are admitting that there has been a cover-up, and they haven't gotten into the details, but that will all come out over time. So we've crossed that threshold. Okay, so we're out of the age of denial. This is huge because it now allows for cooperation and for the denigration to go away. So now students will start exploring this in engineering schools, and because they want to, because now they know that that's there, because the limitations of science that they've been told. You get in there and you try and teach kids about quantum coming from the Cartesian ethos, and it doesn't work. Their brains go and they just can't handle it, right? Now we'll overcome that, and we'll start getting this inner cooperation within humans that leads to things like the internet and leads to this level of flowering of things, right? You don't get that with the secrecy. Even with, I mean, look at how much of Bob Lazar's testimony about all of this is him bitching about they don't allow scientists to talk to each other, to share information and so on, that it's all too compartmentalized and it's harming our investigation. He's 100% correct. We wouldn't be here now the same way we were. Nothing has changed since Bob worked for S4. They don't have that big of a breakthrough in this kind of thing, right? And so this will change over these next few years very rapidly. We'll get, in my thinking, sometime between now and July or August of next year, 2027, we'll get two key breakthroughs that probably already exist, but they'll emerge into our reality, and they'll start forming this combinoric thing, and we're going to get a whole new technology by 2028, because part of that technology is going to be this incorporation of the ability of AI running continuously so fast to be able to, in real time, monitor the development process to get us into manufacturing in like 8 months instead of 8 years, right? Yeah. And so it'll just be fantastic at that level how rapid things will go. It'll still take us X number of times to crank out, 5 million zero-point energy devices, but nonetheless, that's just a matter of feeding it into the funnel. It's not going to take us 8 years to make that funnel. And so this is why we're going to get new mega billionaires, okay? Because there will be people that universe will have told is coming. They're all excited already. They're all whipped up. Their psychic antennas are out, just waiting to get all of these parts to put together to form this giant new multi-billion-dollar enterprise that brings us into sci-fi world. Government won't be able to stop it. Government knows this is coming. They've been told by all of these billionaires it's coming. I know for a fact, I have to be very careful about this. Factually, I know that there are people working for hedge fund guys like BlackRock, those kind of people, right? Not employees, but subcontractors that are doing things like I used to do, predictive analytics, right? And these guys have been telling the hedge fund fellows up at that very high level about what's going to happen over these next 5 years. And those hedge fund guys are trying to push their organizations to get ahead of the curve. That's what you're picking up as people trying to get this word out there. They're the ones that are putting the pressure on Congress. They understand we've got to get out of the age of denial in order for sci-fi world to really blossom. And we're in the 2 years of that birth of sci-fi world. So in that sense, I think it's magnificent. So I'm a super optimist, right? This is just going to be so fantastic. We cannot imagine it. We can barely imagine the first parts of it.
That's the thing. It's such a jump for people. And that's why I love your term hyper novelty, because right. It is getting weirder and weirder every day, not just from what people are seeing in the news, but, and they're not seeing, there's a lot of frustration with it's the seemingly slowness of the release of the things that many people who are awake have been waiting for a long time. I get so fed up of people saying, "Oh, the med beds will be here next week." I'm like, "Yeah, but what are you doing today?" Because I think,
yeah, right.
I think that's a spiritual test as well. Right. Oh, the RV is going to be released. We're all going to be billionaires next week. Well, I've been hearing people say that for years. What are you doing today? That's been my question. What God wants you to stand up and do something today, even if it's learning about how to make bread that's healthy. You know, it's like, that's a good starting point. Make your own toothpaste, clean your water, ground yourself, simple stuff that everybody forgot about. And that's got to come back for us to be worthy of this future in many ways, I think, because
I don't think, so I don't put the characterizations of us having to be worthy or any of that, right? We are as we are. Universe is moving us. Within universe moving humanity, I think there's something else in there that is also moving humanity. Controllers, watchers, whatever you want to call it. I don't think it's there for humanity's good per se, right? Everything acts in its own interest. The watchers, the controllers have their own interest, and we're simply a tool. If we benefit, it's fine, but I don't think they care that much. But we are at that point of change, and we also have to, as you say, direct ourselves to ourselves, right? So I really like that so I'm very focused on myself. I take the time out of my day every day to do my exercises. I train my mind and my body daily, and I do armed defense daily to keep everything sharp. I'm 73 years old. I have every expectation of living another 70 years without any trouble at all. And along in that period of time, there will be new biochemical health things that will come up that will make it easier for me to live a very healthy life for those next 70 years, right? So basically, we're all going to live longer than we anticipate. We'd better get ourselves in shape to be able to do it without too much complaint and to be able to do it effectively. And this is why, again, I'm an optimist, and I like the apocalyptic optimist aspect of it, because we are at the revealing. This is the secrets revealed time that my data started showing in 1999 that was going to be just huge. So in probably it was like 2001, my data started showing the Democratic Party in the United States dying, dissolving, which we're at now, right? It also showed the massive change of humanity as an aspect of this spiritual war. It showed a new form of Christianity emerging globally. We're about to hit that. So my data sets would have 27, 28, 29, and 30 be the first part of this giant global wave of Christianity that's going to have people freaking out everywhere. I mean, like literally you'll have hundreds of Muslims in various areas converting in a day because of dreams. All different kinds of weird shit's going to be happening, right? And this is going to cause consternation in Muslim world, etc. And it's going to get really bizarre, much more so bizarre than it is now. And we're coming into this huge, we're in it now, we're not coming into it. We're in the period of chaos. We're going to have 50 years of this chaos. It has to do with the Kali Yuga and the overhang. But these first 2 years are going to be the most intense, and then it'll sort of trail off as things get better. But my data actually shows that we start seeing real progress in October of this year with some precursors in August. So if you know where to look, you'll see some very hopeful signs that in August will mature into real progress in October. And then things start really snowballing combinatorically, right? The good really starts rolling out in new waves. And this is going to be a very exciting time for people, even people that are trying to make money, because we're going to get into so many different new enterprises, so many different ways of creating value and extracting profit from that value that home businesses and that kind of thing are just going to flourish globally everywhere. People have an idea, and the next thing you know, 4 years later, they've achieved all their wealth goals and they've affected humanity with this good idea. That kind of stuff is in my data sets. I feel privileged to have lived this long to be able to actually see it, because I was reading about it for so long in the 2000s and the 2010s, right? And we're here now. We're emerging. It's really happening. So hopefully, we'll have our fake space alien invasion or real space alien invasion. And in either way, I'll hoist my pirate flag, seize one of those vessels, and off I go. And people think that I don't have a pirate flag, but I've got two of them.
Oh, I bet you've got a pirate flag. I think I might have one here somewhere. Yeah, well, that's people. So fake or real? I think it's going to be possibly both. Is it? What do you think?
I think that they're here. The UFOs and stuff are here. They're going to probably have to fake up an invasion to try and control us and this kind of thing. If they go to that trouble, it may be that Trump is short-circuiting that now. There was some thinking that they were going to roll this out and cause everybody to freak out ahead of the midterms here in the U.S. in order to try and save the Democratic Party. I don't think it'll work, and I think that the push to get the UFO information out ahead of the midterms kind of like flattens that balloon ahead of it getting there. It won't go with a pop. But I do think that there's aspects of, okay, so there are individuals that have a very limited understanding of spirituality. This limited understanding, we see it throughout humanity, devolves into theology. Okay, so you've got like evangelical Zionistic Christians. That's all theology. It has nothing to do with spirit. It doesn't even really have that much to do with religion. And we have these guys, the extremist Muslims, all of these kind of people are theologically bound. These guys are going to get a big comeuppance, a big upset over these next few years. I'm of the opinion that some of the stuff I'd seen in the data suggests that they're going to do that there's going to be acting out, really is the best way to talk about it, right? The frustrations that these minds have will make them insist that that's not the reality, and that they will try and force their version of reality on the rest of us in these actions. I think those are the guys that are going to be doing the fake alien invasion, okay? Because they want you to think of the aliens as demons. And they don't understand even demonology. They've never looked at the gnosis. They've never understood the layers of creation, any of this stuff. And they're just thinking of demons in like the Walt Disney kind of an idea, the cartoon version. But they're going to try and impress that on us, and that's where the fake alien invasion will come from. I don't expect it to be successful. No. I'm not sure that they'll even be able to get it off the ground, because they're anticipating killing maybe 100,000 Americans in this invasion, killing or damaging that many in order to get the emotional oomph. So one of the things, just as an aside, one of the things that I learned in my years of programming and the ALTA reports, the asymmetric linguistic trend analysis, is that there are emotional thresholds, and that you have an emotional threshold. And at some point it causes you to take an action because you can't stand the emotional aspect in your brain anymore. Yeah. There's also collective at that level. And so that's what we're dealing with, is that they're going to reach certain thresholds and they have to express those emotions, however bizarre it may come out. And one of these bizarrenesses may be that they want to do it. Whether or not they're going to be allowed to, can facilitate it, this fake space alien invasion, that's the question, because there are people that are actively working against them, that understand the delusions that these guys are operating under, and are attempting to counter it. So all kinds of battles everywhere within all of our organizations, and even within our own minds.
Well, that's part of the fun. I mean, this is exactly why I told my children Father Christmas didn't exist when they were like 2 years old.
That's why they can't get the Santa virus.
No, exactly. That's what I call it, Santa virus. Oh, the Panto virus. That's what I like that one as well. Right. It's behind you. Where? Yeah. Oh God. Right, we're gonna have to talk about David Wilcock a little bit. Are you okay for time for a few minutes?
Oh, sure. As long as you want, guy. As long as you want.
So I don't like the audience. I don't like giving the audience more than an hour usually, because I find that it's quite, those days of 5-hour podcasts are behind us. Nobody has got the time, but I think they'll find this interesting. But so when this happened with David, you'd had that whole experience with Corey, what's his name? Good. And then, so you were very uniquely qualified to comment. And I remember when it happened, I sat back and went, I'm not commenting on this because I didn't know these guys personally. I was watching from afar and I want to see what everybody has to say. And then you get Kerry Cassidy and people like that saying, shit, no, he's not gone. He's been saved by the secret space program people. And then you're going, no, he was possessed by this narcissistic relationship with a guy that completely screwed his head up. And I had to sit back and go, do you know what? I think Cliff's right, because you sat and watched him on those Sunday night shows and he was just talking utter nonsense about the
Strabati people.
People. Because I was sitting there saying to my girlfriend, I was like, this sounds like they're just screwing him and milking him, and he's doing this and he's paying. How long has this company been going? Where? And he got this little plastic airplane. I was like, really? I couldn't. As somebody who's been in business for 40 years, I was like, that's not the way you do it. That's a very strange way of doing it.
And exactly. And David has never been in business. That was a big flaw of his, right? He had an interesting talent set. He was good at presenting information, but he was not good at discriminating information to present. So you could easily give him information that was bullshit. And if it was presented correctly, he would think it was accurate. He was very gullible that way. And he would get behind it. He would put his emotional energy behind it. He could sell it easily. He presented the nice view of it. His books were just all positive, etc. And he had a good following. But he got into the position of believing his own stuff, right? Not knowing his own limitations. So he'd never been in business. He didn't understand how financing and loans and companies work, nor how to analyze them for an investment, So some guy talked to him and he gave that guy nearly $2 million. Never analyzed any of it, never asked for, due diligence or any of this sort of thing. So he was just that gullible. And this is why he was easily led astray by Corey Good in that narcissistic dynamic that they had in that relationship. David had a good sized ego. That's not a bad thing. Ego is necessary for us to not be earthworms, not be slugs or slaves. But his ego had no real world constraints on it, right? So I don't think he'd ever been in a physical fight in his life, never gotten the shit kicked out of him, never had universe come on in and readjust his mind to reality. And so he didn't have those constraints. And so his emotionality obviously got ahead of him, and he took his life. I think he did so accidentally to some extent. I think that he was actually calling the police to basically talk him out of it, to get him out of it. That's the only reason. I don't think he was one of those people that wanted to have either death by police or to be witnessed by police. It may be some of that, but nonetheless, so he ends up committing suicide. And we saw him degrade over a number of years. So that degradation had been clearly obvious. Those people that are claimed to be the cyber stalkers were the ones that really were most concerned about him. They were constantly, in their addressing of it saying, David, go and get your mental health checked out. Go and get, physical stuff checked out. You're not doing well. And his deterioration was quite visible. You could see it over these last 2 years. And I was so affected by it. Last year in June 5th, I contacted him trying to get him to shake it out, right? I had an idea.
You gave him a strategy, didn't you? And,
correct, right. A strategy that works, right? Yeah. And it's proven to work.
Hands up. Sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't want to
know. And he couldn't. No, okay, so when I presented it to him, he listened to that part of the idea, and then instantly the reaction was that was a negative reaction that told me that his mind was being controlled, but I didn't understand to what degree at that time. But instantly it came up, oh, Corey won't agree to that. Corey will never do that. So he assumed that he had to do it with Corey, that the two of them had to do it together, that somehow they were inextricably linked. And as soon as I started bringing it up, well, Corey doesn't have to be involved, then the conversation ended less than 30 seconds later because his mind would not allow it. And it was because of that narcissistic dynamic being in place there. If you go and look at it, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, examine and study the dynamic involved. It makes sense as to why people get hooked and they can't get away from them. Bear in mind, in 2025, David had in court put written material saying how he didn't want to be involved with Corey anymore. And yet constantly he's back with Corey. He'd tried to get away from Corey in 2022, 2023, 2024, 2025, yet he's continuing to be involved with him. Not because of the lawsuits directly, but because of that dynamic. And David ended up, I don't know how he acquired that house. It's in Nederland, Colorado. Colorado, if you've ever been to that airport, Denver airport, it is the most evil, ugly. I can't stand to get off the airplane and go into that airport, right? No. If I'm there for a delay, I'll sit in the fucking airplane as they service it. I've done that, and they were annoyed. But I wouldn't get out into that airport because I've done it too many times, and it affects me. I think there's lots of aspects of Colorado that are like that, and David was living in one. He was on the top of an 8,000-foot high mountain in this big log cabin with everything he needed, but he didn't know how to do anything. He didn't know how to work his fireplace to heat the place. He could have. He didn't know how to turn on his gen set. He had a 22 kilowatt gen set that would have powered his house. All he had to do was push one button to get it to come on, and he never knew how to do that. He, in fact, made a video of how it's not working and it's broken, and the button to start it was right there in front of him. Anyway, though, so he was incapable of managing himself at that level, and then he was isolated. And it was the isolation that allowed the mental degradation to continue at that pace, in my opinion, right? I'm not a mental health counselor or anything, but I did contact him. I could see it last year, and unfortunately it progressed.
Yeah, I felt the same last year, but I didn't know him to ring him. But I had a soft spot for him because he did a lot of great work early on.
In the early 2000s.
And then the Gaia stuff happened, and I was like, blue aliens, it's interesting. It's a shame in this work. And then you've got, same with Kerry. She's did a lot of great interviews years ago, and I'm like, the whole secret space program thing is interesting, but I don't know where. I mean, I've seen ships, I've been visited, I've seen ships my entire life, but I'm still keeping myself. I think the whole thing's on a need to know basis, on a spiritual level. So I don't sort of say you must believe this. I say this happened to me. I'm not sure what it was,
right?
But I know it's okay. That's basically
I'm holding space open for it, right? Whatever it is, right?
And I enjoy the unfolding of the story, without. Right. And I tried to say to people, look, think for yourself. Don't question everything, including this, because it's just my story, and I think that's a big part of us. How we learn together is having those stories shared, and finding the courage to speak up when you need it, that kind of thing. But it's always sad when somebody dies, and I appreciate you sharing your viewpoint on the David situation, because there's a lot of sense in what you say, a huge amount of sense in what you say. And thanks for trying to help him. But, I've been there myself. A lot of people say there were no signs of it. He said he wasn't. Well, I've known a lot of my friends have committed suicide, and it came out of the blue. You would not have known that they were suicidal. They just go. They snap decision, because it's deep.
David wasn't like that. He lived as he expressed his life. So everybody that was watching him on a weekly basis, if you had any understanding, you knew where he was headed. Week after week after week, it was just, continuing degradation. Yeah.
Oh, well.
Yeah, very sad, though. Yeah.
Yeah, it is sad. But in terms of where all that's going, it's going to be quite quick now, isn't it?
I think that we, so my data sets would suggest that we're going to be very energetic this summer, that as we get into the end of June and then really push into July, we're going to get some major changes. at a society level that will further facilitate more information coming out, and it'll start becoming really combinoric, so that this will be a very, as I say, very energetic summer. And then by October, we'll start seeing some signs of progress, right? How that progress is going to appear will be very minimal at first, but once it's there and once it's solid, off we go. We have some real signs of this now in the sense that we're getting a movement to more sound money, and that's going to change everything here, right? The Trump dollars, however much of a joke people think they are, it's the lead into a constitutional treasury note or treasury bill, which will be money, right? Rather than a promissory note like we get from the Federal Reserve. So no American dollar is money, it's currency. And so that's going to rapidly change the nature of everything here. It'll also propel the market disruptions into a more sane way. So there's going to be market disruptions globally, as we're seeing like with the crash of the Indian stock market, right? Because of the effect of gold on their currency. That's exactly what's going on. The metals are draining the purchasing power out of the country, and they can't have that because they're so finely balanced with their huge population. China is next, and then followed by Japan, and then by Europe, and then the US. And so maybe by July, something will have the stock market problems here in the US, and then there will be some social changes that will emerge. In my opinion, these social changes are already planned. The Trump administration already has them ready to go, but it's just not ready to implement them because you have to have the demand in order for them to put out a new product, and that demand is going to arise from the unstable conditions that are going to occur over these next couple of months relative to the financing. And so it's going to be a very wild time that way. And then in October or so, we'll have some level of stability that will start creeping in. And maybe it'll be a case of they have to close stock markets. I don't know. Maybe they'll have to shut them down for a period of time and then they reopen them in October. That would be a sign of progress. So the data is saying that we have signs of progress at a social order by the time we get into October, and that the progress stems from something that's being done in August. And it has to take a couple of months to come into visibility or fruition. And then thereafter, it starts becoming combinoric. So the first thin edge of the wedge of sound money starts changing the whole social order in ways we cannot imagine now. Most of the kids will never grasp what has happened to their lives as this happens. And in the midst of all of that, the Cartesian paradigm collapses. So I think that goes this July. I think we will discover something, or it'll be announced, it's already known or whatever, it'll be formalized, that will basically say Cartesian space doesn't exist. Here's a much better model of our reality. And that'll start people going off. Basically, now that we're out of the age of denial, they'll go off and come up with human created versions of 0-point energy, all of this kind of thing. And then it's like go, go, go from this point on.
You've alluded a couple of times to there being some information coming out that may change our view of what the creator is.
Yep.
What do you think? Who is it?
Okay, so what we have is the Hermetic understanding. Okay, so there we can easily state that there is an absolute and we are not it. Okay, we can easily state that the absolute behaves in certain ways and that we are not it, that there is an infinite mind out there and we are not it. We are a finite mind and we can only think to a certain degree, and we're bound by that thinking. There's going to be a new understanding, a non-theological understanding, a non-theologically tainted framework as part of our new paradigm. And so we could say there is supreme consciousness, and this is a crude way of stating it. There is supreme consciousness, and we're all little tiny containers of some of that supreme consciousness that has been tricked into believing itself separate from the rest of supreme consciousness, and it's shoved into those containers. In my way of thinking, these containers are energetic, and they're our souls, and they are given to us from life to life to life. Part of this is going to come out is this idea of eternal humans, not immortal, because each body dies, but we are eternal. And as this body I'm in now dies, I will segue into another body. And the segueing, the transition process, is its own separate thing that we need not go into, but it happens. And I'll come out in another body, carrying with it aspects of this life that I will take into that body, right? And so this kind of understanding will come out, and a lot of the theology of life will fall away. This will be most effective on those religions that are ritual bound, where they think the manipulation of matter, oh, I can take this chicken and put my sins on it and then lop its head off, and all of my sins are somehow absolved, right? So Judaic or Talmudic understanding is going to go away. The Talmudic understanding affects Mohammedism, right? And so the idea of the 72 virgins is going to die off, right? There is no perpetual heaven where you have
who's going to break it to them?
Well, that's going to be part of this whole process. Okay, so the data sets had this weird thing, and I'm talking the data. So the longer it was in the data sets, the more it was picking it up ahead of time and watching the emotional energy build until it actually manifested. And we have yet to see a lot of the stuff that was in the Alta reports manifest. Timing issues aside, timing is just such a bitch on this. But anyway, so the data sets described a situation where there would be this what I'm calling a Christian revival. Okay, it's not really that, because it's not about any church. It has very little to do with any theocracy or any theologically applied anything over Christianity. In fact, this Christianity will eschew the Bible. They'll think the Bible is just a 300-year-old or a 500-year-old book that was written in the middle of Russia, not as portrayed, right? And so these things will fall away, and Christianity is going to take a different turn. And I can't put it together. I don't have any of the details, but I just know that we're going to have a form of Christianity that is emergent, that will have aspects of the Book of Thomas in it, and that will go to the idea that Christ was a teacher of how to manifest and how to deal with all of these energies that we find ourselves in, and was basically a master of life, attempting to teach us how to live, right? Not attempting to save our souls or any of that sort of thing, because you can't save your soul. It's eternal. It's perpetual. Yeah. And so a lot of these things will fall off. Now, when that happens, as I say, there are going to be these periods where we will have news reports of disruptions, social disruptions that will take over large areas of Muslim countries and will cause the Muslim governments to freak out, cause all kinds of people to freak out. Imams and all these people will just be spewing hate like you wouldn't believe. And it will nonetheless be a phenomenon that no one is going to be able to control or eliminate. And in the data sets, it described this as sometimes waking dreams, where people would be walking along on the street and basically be struck by an expression of the spirit, and all of a sudden their minds are not open to Islam anymore, and they're going to consider themselves to be something that they'll label Christianity, right? And so we're going to have a very much broader definition of Christianity. No Church of England, no Catholic Church restrictions, no evangelical restrictions, that kind of thing. It's going to be entirely different. In fact, it's going to cause huge disruptions within the mega churches here in the United States, because this is also going to happen to those people that are Bible thumpers and stuff. They'll have dreams.
That's why the pastors were taken to one side last week. Is that a true story, do you think?
That is true. That is true. That's factual. Yeah.
And told to prepare their people. Those were the terminology they were using, wasn't it?
Correct. And so those instructions, in my opinion, are coming out of that group that they call the Lincoln Group or the Lincoln Project. Okay, these are the people that think aliens are demons, and that's what they're attempting to do, is to create a narrative paradigm ahead of the actual emergence of this stuff. And so maybe they actually know that 3i Atlas is colonizing Jupiter as we speak, right? And has been spewing probes all throughout our solar system. They know certainly it's not a comet. They know it's a big ship and was all of this. They're not telling us any of that. How long before any of this stuff comes out, I don't know. But we can infer from some of their movements that they are feeling pressured by something time-wise to get this stuff out there. Yeah. And this pressure is most acutely being expressed by those people that see the aliens as demons. Why that should be, maybe it's just because they want to get ahead and they want to own the narrative when it comes out to try and control things. Who knows what their motivation is, but nonetheless, they'll be out there ahead of time. This is going to be just a really weird period as we get into this. It'll go for a couple of years with these episodes. And we're talking, maybe we'll see headlines, on X or something that say, 1,200 Muslim people converted to Christianity overnight in this particular village. That'll be the kind of weird thing popping up. And so it's just going to be quite odd, but it won't be your papa's Christianity, right? This will be an entirely different viewpoint of the individual and that we call Christ, and the relationship of Christ to an individual now, and our spiritual awakening. And it's all going to be part of this ontological viewpoint, because the aliens don't believe in Christ. They don't believe in Allah or any of that, right? They understand the hermetic understanding of all of this, that we're all encapsulated parts of a giant absolute intelligence. And so we have to deal with the aliens on their level, right? Otherwise we're ants.
Yeah, it was Stuart. Did you ever read Stuart Wilde's work?
Yeah. Way back in the day.
Yeah, he was the first one that said UFOs are demons, and that's the first time I disagreed with him. I was like, Stuart, maybe you shouldn't drink vodka with the ayahuasca next time, because I was like, it's
too pat, too easy.
Yeah. Too easy. Yeah.
We live in a very messy, disorderly universe that's constantly changing. That's all we can count on, is the never-ending event stream and the changes. And so anything that would have a solid view, a very definite view of any damn thing, is rigid and is falling away. We're changing in the minute that you come up with that idea, right?
Yeah.
And demons are so limited. It's the understanding people have is so cartoonish and immature because they're not Gnostics. They've never really gotten into any of that back then. We're going to revisit all of that. All of this ancient stuff is going to come on up, and we're going to have all these weird cults emerge and all of that sort of thing that will settle out over these next 4 or 5 years.
Well, that's why I'm finding it fun.
Yeah, it is.
It is actually fun. And I know that you've given me a good portion of your morning, and it's been great chatting to you. I really appreciate your time today.
Sure. No problem at all. Love chatting with you too. Yeah.
Yeah, you have a great day. Give my love to Heidi, and hopefully we'll see you again.
Okay. Thank you much. Anytime.
Thank you for everything. See you later. Bye. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.